Welcome to the Mind Spark, bringing you the latest news from around the world. The headline flashed everywhere: China halts U.S. exports. It was a phrase that echoed across every television, every smartphone, and every front page in America. Overnight, a single decision from across the Pacific sent shockwaves through the heart of the world's largest economy. News anchors struggled to keep up with the unfolding crisis, their voices tinged with disbelief as they repeated the same chilling words: China has stopped all exports to the United States. American industry grinds to a halt, the once steady rhythm of machines, the clang of metal, the hum of conveyor belts, all fell silent. Across the nation, factory floors that had buzzed with activity just hours before now stood eerily quiet, their machinery frozen in place, as if time itself had stopped. On June 21, 2025, the hum of American factories stopped, the lights flickered out and the assembly lines halted mid-production, leaving half-finished products as silent witnesses to the sudden disruption. It was a day that would be remembered for generations, a day when the engine of American manufacturing simply ceased to turn. Assembly lines in Detroit and Silicon Valley fell silent. Workers arrived to locked gates and no answers. The digital age's Paul Revere moment had come. In cities built on innovation and industry, confusion and fear replaced the usual morning bustle. Men and women who had spent decades building America's future now found themselves standing outside, searching for answers that no one could give. At a GM plant in Flint, Michigan, Sarah Jenkins, a third-generation auto worker, summed it up: "One minute, we're building the future. The next, we're told to go home. No parts, no work, just silence." Her words captured the uncertainty and heartbreak felt by millions. For families like hers, the factory wasn't just a job, it was a legacy, now suddenly in jeopardy. Across the country, wind turbine blades in Texas and medical devices in North Carolina sat unfinished. The ripple effect was immediate and devastating. From renewable energy to life-saving healthcare equipment, entire industries were paralyzed, their supply chains severed in an instant. The missing piece? A tiny component most Americans had never heard of. It was a part so small it could fit in the palm of your hand, yet so vital that without it, nothing could move forward. America, the superpower, was suddenly dependent on a rival for a crucial part. And that rival had just turned off the tap. The vulnerability was exposed for all to see. In Washington, disbelief turned to panic. Emergency sessions and press briefings offered little comfort. Lawmakers scrambled to understand the full scope of the crisis, their faces drawn and voices strained as they addressed a nation desperate for reassurance. The government's usual confidence was replaced by uncertainty, as leaders admitted they had no immediate solution. The stock market plunged. Billions of dollars vanished in hours. On trading floors, seasoned investors stared in disbelief as numbers tumbled. At home, families watched the news in growing fear, wondering what tomorrow would bring. Retirement savings, college funds, and livelihoods all seemed to hang in the balance. This wasn't a distant threat. The gears of American industry had stopped, and no one knew how to start them again. The nation stared into an economic abyss. The silence was deafening. In that stillness, a new reality set in, one where the world's most powerful nation was brought to its knees, not by war or disaster, but by the sudden absence of a single irreplaceable part. The culprit? It wasn't a villain in the shadows or a saboteur in the night. It was something far more unassuming, something you could hold between your fingertips, yet powerful enough to bring entire industries to a halt. A neodymium magnet, small, powerful, and essential. These tiny marvels are the unsung heroes of modern technology, quietly enabling the devices and machines we rely on every day. From the smartphone in your pocket to the electric car in your driveway, neodymium magnets are everywhere, hidden but indispensable. Over 90% of the world's supply is processed in China. This dominance didn't happen overnight. It was the result of decades of investment, planning, and strategic control over rare earth elements. The world became comfortable, even complacent, as China quietly became the gatekeeper. Dr. Ellen Rios at MIT held one up. This tiny magnet powers your phone, your car, even missiles. It's the invisible force behind our modern lives. She explained how these magnets are critical for everything from wind turbines to medical imaging, and how losing access would be catastrophic. We built our world on the assumption we'd always have them. We were wrong. The impact was instant. Newsrooms buzzed with urgency, and factory workers stared in disbelief as production lines ground to a halt. GM's electric motors, defense contractors' jets, and MRI machines all needed these magnets. Without them, production stopped. Hospitals delayed scans, automakers missed deadlines, and the military faced unexpected vulnerabilities. Supply chains, optimized for efficiency, had no buffer. There were no stockpiles, no backup plans, just a fragile thread stretching across oceans now suddenly cut. The system broke in a day. What took decades to build unraveled in hours, leaving workers idle and factories silent. America had offshored production for convenience and cost. The decision seemed smart at the time: cheaper labor, fewer regulations, higher profits. But the true cost was hidden, waiting for a moment of crisis to reveal itself. Now, the price was clear. Costs soared, supply dried up, and panic set in as companies scrambled for alternatives that didn't exist. The missing magnet wasn't just a part, it was a symbol of strategic failure. Its absence echoed through boardrooms and government offices alike. The nation was hostage to a rival supply chain. Decisions made years ago now left America vulnerable, dependent, and exposed. The crisis exposed a vulnerability ignored for decades. Warnings had been issued, reports filed, but the urgency was always tomorrow's problem, until it wasn't. America's technological edge was built on a fragile foundation. The cracks were now impossible to ignore, threatening innovation and security alike. The bill had come due. The question now: who would pay? And how high would the price be for ignoring the warning signs? The shutdown rippled through the economy like falling dominoes. Manufacturers fell first, then suppliers, truckers, and small businesses. Trucking contracts vanished, warehouses emptied, the dance of commerce stopped. In Ohio, David Chen's machine shop lost all orders overnight. I had to tell my neighbors, my employees, there's no work. We're all paying for a decision made half a world away. Unemployment claims soared. Families faced lost homes and empty fridges. The American dream felt like a cruel joke. Government tools, rate cuts, stimulus checks couldn't restart assembly lines without parts. America had the factories and workers, but not the key ingredient. The crisis revealed a hard truth. A nation that can't make what it needs isn't independent. It's vulnerable, its fate decided by others. The supply chain was broken, and so was the promise of security. The cost was more than economic, it was social. This was no accident. Beijing's move was calculated, the result of years of strategic planning and careful observation of global trends. Every step was deliberate, every signal sent with purpose. For years, China quietly built dominance in rare earths, investing heavily in mining, refining, and manufacturing, while the US and its allies focused on finance, software, and the digital economy. As the world became more dependent on advanced technology, China ensured it controlled the materials at the heart of innovation. The export ban was China flexing its muscles, showing it could control the global economy's gears. By restricting access to these critical resources, Beijing sent a clear message: it could disrupt supply chains and impact industries worldwide with a single policy shift. Tensions had been rising for months, with trade disputes and diplomatic standoffs making headlines. The ban was a direct response, a shot across America's bow, signaling that economic power could be wielded as effectively as military might. Chinese media called it self-defense, framing the move as a necessary protection of national interests. But to the rest of the world, it looked like the opening salvo in a new kind of Cold War, one fought not with missiles but with supply chains, resources, and economic leverage. The message was unmistakable: dependence on one country for critical goods is a massive risk. Suddenly, companies and governments everywhere were forced to confront the vulnerabilities in their supply chains, as empty shelves and production delays became a stark reality. The era of unchecked globalization was over. Strategic trade had begun. Nations started to rethink alliances, diversify suppliers, and invest in domestic production, marking a fundamental shift in how the world does business. China shattered the old rules, announcing itself as a co-author of the new ones. No longer content to follow, Beijing was now setting the agenda, shaping the future of global commerce and diplomacy. At home, Beijing rallied nationalist pride and projected strength, using state media and public events to unify the population behind its bold strategy. The message was clear: China was rising, and the world would have to adapt. Abroad, it positioned itself as a stable partner, redirecting exports to others and forging new alliances. As some doors closed, others opened, and China moved swiftly to fill the gaps left by its rivals. The Dragon's Gambit was bold, risky, and ruthlessly effective. It was a high-stakes play that forced competitors to rethink their strategies and acknowledge China's growing influence. The world was forced to take notice. In boardrooms and government offices across the globe, leaders scrambled to respond, realizing that the balance of power had shifted and that Beijing was now a force to be reckoned with. Corporate America panicked. Their business models depended on China. Emergency meetings asked, "What now?" The world was out of magnets. Some companies considered moving operations to China, not for cost, but survival. One CEO told us, "Moving to China gets us magnets and products, but it feels like a betrayal." The dilemma: save the company or the country? No good answers. China was ready. It offered American firms licenses to operate in special zones, with guaranteed magnet access. The catch: joint ventures, technology transfers, and deeper dependence. To survive, companies had to give up long-term advantages. The scramble for survival had begun. Every choice came with a cost. The crisis forced American companies into a strategic trap. The future of U.S. industry hung in the balance. While America stalled, others seized the moment. China redirected magnets to Europe and Asia, rewarding partners and isolating the US. German automakers and Asian tech giants ramped up, filling the void left by American firms. "This is a golden opportunity," a German executive said. "America's machine is paused. We're ready to fill the gap." Asian companies like Samsung and Sony surged ahead as Apple and others struggled. The global tech and auto landscape shifted overnight. China became the world's gatekeeper, picking winners and losers. America, once the center of global manufacturing, was now on the outside looking in. Economic power had become the ultimate weapon. The shockwave hit America's allies too. Mexico and Canada, tied to US supply chains, saw factories shut down, trade routes jammed, shipping costs soared, shortages spread worldwide, a global price war erupted. With US goods scarce, prices for tech and cars skyrocketed. China subsidized its industries, undercutting any American recovery. The crisis exposed a national security threat. US weapons systems relied on Chinese magnets. The military's supply chain was just as vulnerable as Main Street's. The ripple effects now threatened America's security, not just its economy. The crisis had gone global and strategic. America faced a crossroads: dependence or independence. The easy path: accept China's terms, move manufacturing, and get products flowing again. The cost: loss of technological leadership and economic sovereignty. The hard path: rebuild supply chains at home, invest billions, and endure years of pain. It would take a decade or more, but lead to true security. The debate raged: pragmatism versus patriotism. Some argued for engagement, warning against isolation and stagnation. Others called for independence, saying the crisis was a final warning. Rebuilding was a patriotic imperative, worth the short-term pain for long-term freedom. America's future, its leadership, security, and resilience was at stake. The choice had yet to be made. The debate over America's destiny had only just begun.